89 of our 365-day Bible read. Today, from the Old Testament, we're going to be reading Judges chapters 1 and 2, and then we'll do the Bible study for Judges chapter 1 and 2, and then we'll go on over to the New Testament and we'll read Luke chapter 7, verse 1 through 30. And tomorrow we're going to finish Luke chapter 7 by reading verse 31 through 49. And then we'll do the Bible study for the entire Luke chapter 7 tomorrow. This is so exciting. We're starting a new book of the Bible. We're starting Judges today. So we're knocking them out. Let's get started. Judges chapter 1. The continuing conquest of Canaan. Judges chapter 1. After the death of Joshua, the people of Israel inquired of the Lord, "Who shall go up first for us against the Canaanites, to fight against them?" The Lord said, "Judah shall go up. Behold, I have given the land into his hand." And Judah said to Simeon, his brother, "Come up with me into the territory allotted to me, that we may fight against the Canaanites. And I likewise will go with you into the territory allotted to you." So Simeon went with him. Then Judah went up, and the Lord gave the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand, and they defeated 10,000 of them at Bezek. They found Adoni-Bezek at Bezek and fought against him and defeated the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Adoni-Bezek fled, but they pursued him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and his big toes. And Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and their big toes cut off used to pick up scraps under the table, under my table. As I have done so, God has repaid me. And they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. And the men of Judah fought against Jerusalem and captured it and struck it with the edge of the sword and set the city on fire. And afterward, the men of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites who lived in the hill country, in the Negeb, and in the lowland. And Judah went against the Canaanites who lived in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron was formerly Kiriath Arba. And they defeated Sheshai and Ahiman and Talmai. From there they went against the inhabitants of Debir. The name of Debir was formerly Kiriath Sepher. And Caleb said, "He who attacks Kiriath Sepher and captures it, I will give him Aksah, my daughter, for a wife." And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, captured it. And he gave him Aksah, his daughter, for a wife. When she came to him, she urged him to ask her father for a field. And she dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb said to her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Give me a blessing, since you have set me in the land of the Negeb. Give me also springs of water." And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. And the descendants of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up with the people of Judah from the city of palms into the wilderness of Judah, which lies in the Negeb near Arad. And they went and settled with the people. And Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they defeated the Canaanites who inhabited Zephath, and devoted it to destruction. So the name of the city was called Hormah. Judah also captured Gaza. with its territory, and Ashkelon with its territory, and Ekron with its territory. And the Lord was with Judah, and he took possession of the hill country. But he could not drive out the inhabitants of the plain, because they had chariots of iron. And Hebron was given to Caleb, as Moses had said, and he drove out from it the 3 sons of Anak. But the people of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites who lived in Jerusalem. So the Jebusites had lived with the people of Benjamin in Jerusalem to this day. So the Jebusites have lived with the people of Benjamin in Jerusalem to this day. The house of Joseph also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. And the house of Joseph scouted out Bethel. Now the name of the city was formerly Luz. And the spies saw a man coming out of the city, and they said to him, "Please show us the way into the city, and we will deal kindly with you." And he showed them the way into the city, and they struck the city with the edge of the sword. But they let the man and all his family go. And the man went to the land of Hittites and built a city and called its name Luz. That is its name to this day. Failure to complete the conquest. Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants of Beth-shan and its villages, or Tanakh and its villages, or the inhabitants of Dor and its villages, or the inhabitants of Ibleam and its villages, or the inhabitants of Megiddo and its villages, for the Canaanites persisted in dwelling in that land. When Israel grew strong, they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not drive them out completely. And Ephraim did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. So the Canaanites lived in Gezer among them. Zebulun did not drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, or the inhabitants of Nahalal. So the Canaanites lived among them, but became subject to forced labor. Asher did not drive out the inhabitants of Akko, or the inhabitants of Sidon, or of Alab, or of Akzib, or of Helbah, or of Aphik, or of Rehob. So the Asherites lived among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out. Naphtali did not drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh, or the inhabitants of Beth Anath. So they lived among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and of Beth Anath became subject to forced labor for them. The Amorites pressed the people of Dan back into the hill country, for they did not allow them to come down to the plain. The Amorites persisted in dwelling in Mount Heres, in Ajalon, and in Shaalbim. But the hand of the house of Joseph rested heavily on them, and they became subject to forced labor. And the border of the Amorites ran from the ascent of Akrabbim, from Selah and upward. All right, so that was I'm sorry, I was about to say Joshua. We just finished Joshua yesterday. That was Judges chapter 1, and we're now going to do the Bible study for Judges chapter 1, and then we'll come back and we'll read Judges chapter 2, and we'll do the Bible study for Judges chapter 2. Okay, so Judges chapter 1, the Bible study is literally only 2 questions long. Okay, Judges chapter 1 Bible study. In all of Israel's conquest, what did they fail to do? Israel failed to utterly drive out all the inhabitants of Canaan. What did Israel elect to do with some of the inhabitants of Canaan? Israel made the remaining Canaanites slaves and had them pay tribute. All right, so that was the Bible study for Judges chapter 1, and we're now going back to the Old Testament and we're going to read Judges chapter 2, and then we'll do the Bible study for that before we go on over to the New Testament and read Luke chapter 7. All right, Judges chapter 2. Israel's disobedience. Now, the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim, and he said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give to your fathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall break down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. What is this you have done? So now I say, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare to you. As soon as the angel of the Lord spoke these words to all the people of Israel, the people lifted up their voices and wept, and they called the name of that place Bochim, and they sacrificed there to the Lord. The death of Joshua. When Joshua dismissed the people of Israel went each to his inheritance to take possession of the land. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great work that the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years old. 110 years. And they buried him within the boundaries of his inheritance in Timnath-Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of the mountain of Gosh. And all that generation also were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. Israel's unfaithfulness. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. And they abandoned the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went after other gods from among the gods of the peoples who were around them, and bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord to anger. They abandoned the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers who plundered them. And he sold them into the hand of their surrounding enemies, so that they could no longer withstand their enemies. Whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them for harm, as the Lord had warned, and as the Lord had sworn to them, and they were in terrible distress. The Lord raises up judges. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to their judges, for they whored after other gods and bowed down to them. They soon turned aside from the way in which their fathers had walked, and had obeyed the commandments of the Lord, and they did not do so. Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge, and he saved them from the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning because of those who afflicted and oppressed them. But whenever the judge died, they turned back and were more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. They did not drop any of their practices or their stubborn ways. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he said, because this people have transgressed my covenant that I commanded their fathers, and have not obeyed my voice, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations that Joshua left when he died, in order to test Israel by them, whether they will take care to walk in the way of the Lord as their fathers did or not. So the Lord left those nations, not driving them out quickly, and he did not give them into the hand of Joshua. All right, so that was Judges chapter 2, and we are now going to do the Bible study for Judges chapter 2, and then we'll go on over to the New Testament, and we will read Luke chapter 7, verse 1 through 30. Okay, hi everyone who has joined, welcome. Okay, Judges chapter 2 Bible study. How did God feel about Israel's covenant with some of the people of Canaan? God was angry and would not help Israel anymore because of their covenant with Canaan. To what did Israel soon fall? Israel began to worship Baal and other false gods. What did God raise up for Israel to help them in times of their oppression? God raised up judges to lead them back to him. All right, so that was the Bible study for Judges chapter 2. We're now going on over to the New Testament to read Luke chapter 7, verse 1 through 30. And we're not going to do the Bible study for Luke chapter 7 today. We're going to wait until tomorrow once we finish Luke chapter 7 by reading verse 31 through 49. And then we'll do the Bible study for the entire Luke chapter 7 tomorrow. We are splitting up. We're reading the Bible straight through. We're reading the Old Testament straight through, and we're reading the New Testament straight through, but we're reading a little bit of the Old Testament and a little bit of the New Testament every day. But there's less books of the Bible in the New Testament, so some of the chapters we are splitting into 2 days for reading them. That way, for this entire year that we'll be reading the Bible, we'll be able to read some of both the Old and New Testament every day, because if we read the chapter straight through of the New Testament, we would finish the New Testament before we even finish the Old Testament, because there's way more books in the Old Testament. So that's why we're doing it that way. So, okay, Luke chapter 7. Jesus heals a centurion's servant. Luke chapter 7. After he had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. Now, a centurion had a servant who was sick and at the point of death, who was highly valued by him. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he is the one who built us our synagogue." And Jesus went with them. When he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore, I did not presume to come to you. But say the word, and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turning to the crowd that followed him, said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant well. Jesus raises a widow's son. Soon afterward, he went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a great crowd went with him. As he drew near to the gate of the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a considerable crowd from the town was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came up and touched the bier, and the barriers, and the barriers stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And the dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people." And this report about him spread through all of Judah and all the surrounding country. Messengers from John the Baptist. The disciples of John reported all these things to him, and John, calling 2 of his disciples to him, sent them to the Lord, saying, "Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?" And when the men had come to him, they said, "John the Baptist has sent us to you, saying, 'Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?'" In that hour he healed many people of diseases and plagues and evil spirits, and on many who were blind he bestowed sight. And he answered them, "Go and tell John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up. The poor have good news preached to them, and blessed is the one who is not offended by me." When John's messenger had gone, Jesus began to speak to the crowds concerning John. "What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing? Behold, those who are dressed in splendid clothing and live in luxury are in king's courts. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is he of whom it is written, 'Behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you.' I tell you, among those born of women, none is greater than John, yet the one who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he." When all the people heard this, and the tax collectors too, they declared God just, having been baptized with the baptism of John. But the Pharisees and the lawyers rejected the purpose of God for themselves, not having been baptized by him. All right, so that was Luke chapter 7, verse 1 through 30. We are going to finish Luke chapter 7 tomorrow by reading verse 31 through 49, and then we'll do the Bible study for the entire Luke chapter 7 tomorrow. So we are done for today. A recap of what we did today from the Old Testament. We read, we started the book of Judges today by reading chapters 1 and 2 from the book of Judges. And then we did the Bible study for Judges chapter 1 and 2. And then we came on over to the New Testament and we read Luke chapter 7, verse 1 through 30, and we will finish it tomorrow and do the Bible study for it. So our day is complete. I love you guys. God loves you. You matter. You are worthy. You are valuable. You are enough. You are important. You're beautiful. And God loves you. And I love you. And I will see you guys tomorrow for day 90. We're almost to 100 days of opening the Bible and reading it. So I'm so excited for us on this journey. I've never opened the Bible for 100 straight days and read it. So this is very exciting. So I'm excited for us and our growth on this journey. So, yes, I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 90.